4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know how to count to 10 with my fingers. Do you? Did you know that around 5% of people in the world have dyscalculia, which makes it hard for them to work with numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I counted up to 8. Well, what if I told you that some cultures can only count up to 8? Or that some can go all the way up to 12? There's a group in Papua New Guinea which is able to count to 27 with their whole body. This is just a tiny example of how the culture we grow up in changes us. At times, we tend to close ourselves in an English bubble, this place where we only recognize our one way of thinking as right. But look at it this way. Language is the key to understanding the culture, and cultures differ. I'll show you far more. Come with me. So, if we actually want to understand everything, we need to get down to the basics. What even is a language? A ball. Think of what a ball is. It's bouncy, spherical, and used to play with. This is kind of how language works. Words have meanings widely understood by a culture. I'll add to that since I mentioned culture. What is a culture? It's the customs and beliefs of a particular group of people. Everybody exists in a culture. Say, Polish culture or English culture. Those two differ, don't they? Say, us Poles don't appreciate tea as much as the English. That sets our cultures apart. We're not the same. Those two crucial factors work hand in hand. The culture influences the language. That's why there are no two same languages. Moving on, I have another linguistic definition for you. What comes before a full-fledged language? Some of you definitely got it right. A dialect. Think of it as a plant's shoot. There's a mother plant, and from it stems a new plant, but it isn't identical. That's how a dialect appears. And when the shoot is developed enough, it cuts off its roots. A new language is born. But remember that language and culture are tied together. So not only is a language born, but a brand new culture too. A language develops out of dialect. Okay, but then when does that happen? After 100 years of existence? 200? 1,000 years? To complicate things for us, there's no way to determine it. We like to say that it happens when a dialect has its own standardized orthography and art is being made in that dialect. To be honest, it's kind of a big simplification. Take British English and American English. So they have two separate ways of spelling. Both are being written in either. Are they two different languages and not variants of one? See, but this is why I told you that that was a simplification. It just doesn't work like that. See, people thousands of years ago didn't bestow us with recordings of their languages, which is very inconvenient for us now. Though we know some languages have changed quite little over the course of a long time, like Icelandic. The old and modern languages are very similar. Want to know just how similar? Well, Icelandic speakers can read 13th century poetry with basically no problem. If you were to try that with English, however, you'd hit a dead end by the first word. In fact, 36% of British people don't understand Shakespearean English. So even early modern English is unrecognizably different from the actual modern version. No matter if American, British, Australian, or any other variety of the language. And so just like there are no same snowflakes, there are no same languages. Some of them could change completely in just about a few hundred years, while some others could take millennia. A few of those die out before they can make it to language status at all. Here, we can ask a question similar to the chicken or egg dilemma. What came first, a language or a dialect? To answer, a language. Sadly, this can't be made into a challenging problem because we're positive as to how the languages of today happened. It all starts with a proto-language. To keep it simple, I'll follow the development of Punjabi, a language spoken in India. So first, there was Proto-Indo-European, usually shortened to PIE, sometimes written as PI, which is just so awesome. From it didn't come from any dialect, as it was one of the 142 instances when language was invented. From it came a dialect, Indo-Iranian, which all of Northern India's tongues, all along with Farsi and Kurdish, come from. Another dialect later, we have the Indo-Aryan language at hand, which focuses us in on India solely. Through Vedic Sanskrit and Prakrit, we developed into Central Indian, which, as the name suggests, is the basis for all languages spoken in Central India today. Yet another dialect later, we're in the modern day, where Punjabi exists and is spoken by over 150 million people. Throughout those millennia, a lot changed. A language usually starts off with 100 to a few hundred words. Think the most basic verbs. To eat, to sleep, to see, just to name a few. Now I'd like you to think of the most basic nouns. I can come up with water, tree, or person. This gives you the idea of what a language starts off with. If so, then how come English has a vocabulary of over 500,000 words? Let's take a look at the word meat. Seems insanely basic, doesn't it? But it used to mean something completely different before. This prosaic term used to refer to all food, not just the flesh of animals. This process, which no language is free of, is called semantic shift. Words change meaning over time, essentially. This specific process we observe here is called narrowing. Also notice how the word food plays the old role of the word meat. Now we're able to express both ideas. But languages don't only narrow or broaden their meanings. They can also change feelings associated with them. For that matter, I like to bring up the word awful, which used to have good connotations, but now is a word used to express dislike. This process is called pejoration, the opposite of amelioration. Finally, if a language hasn't discovered or come up with some idea, it can adapt it from a neighboring or influential culture. Do avocados grow in Europe? Well, then how did the term for this fruit appear in every single language across the whole continent? The answer is actually quite simple. English, specifically, borrowed it from Spanish, which it borrowed from classical Nahuatl. And that's how it goes. Those are the strategies a language can use to broaden its dictionary, semantic shift, and borrowing. Having acquired so much linguistic knowledge, it's high time you put it to use. First, I'd love to take you to the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, where reside the Brahma people. They're a small, isolated culture. That makes it a place of interest for linguists. The ones who actually went there came back with shock on their faces. They don't have words for colors. At least that's how I suspect the conversation started. Literally nothing, they continue. And yes, the Brahma lack words for red, blue, or yellow. The only quote-unquote colors they can express are light and dark. Of course, they aren't colorblind. There simply wasn't ever a need for those words, so they didn't develop. How cool is that? But some people don't love rain and humidity, so I call for a change of scenery. Now we're in the dry desert. In fact, this will cover the entirety of the Arabian Peninsula and Northern Africa, where the literary language is modern Standard Arabic. Perhaps as a coincidence, in Babylonia many centuries ago, the clock was invented, the passage of time. Let's imagine that, for example, you had a test yesterday, went out with friends today, and will buy a new TV tomorrow. How would you put those events on a timeline? For most of us, it would look something like this. The test is on the left, and the other events are on the right of it. But if you were to ask an Algerian person, they'd put the test on the right instead, then going on in the middle, and the TV on the left. With that, I'd like you to notice a correlation. We write from left to right, and time flows in the same direction. But for speakers of MSA, it's reversed. Time flows in the opposite direction, because that's the way the writing system goes. This is something you can notice in any language for that matter. Time flows the same way the writing system does. And now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back to counting. For most of us, it's kind of obvious that each finger is a digit, so we just count each one and call it a day. But what can prove to be a slap in the face is finding out that not all of us can agree on this. First, let's subtract 2 and Northern California. There, we can meet the Yuki people, and if you ask them to count with their fingers, they're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's all. Why? To outrun all of your questions. No, they aren't missing 2 fingers. They actually don't count the fingers at all, but the spaces between them instead, which is how they get 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To this number, we add 12. We add 4. With that 4, we throw ourselves into Asia. In multiple parts of it, counting is done totally differently, not in the way you expect. Remember the teacher that used the pointer in class? This is the role your thumb takes on here. And the joint from the remaining fingers is what you count. Can you try to count that way? What number do you get? Well, I hope you got 12, because that's the correct answer. With this system, just one hand gives us 12 digits. And now the cherry on top. Circling back to a dense jungle, welcome to Papua New Guinea, an oceanic country with over 7,000 different tribes living in it. One of them are the Telephone, and they speak a language of the same name, but we're the most interested in the way they count. We start with the left pinky. That's 1. The rest of the fingers, then the wrist is 6. When we touch our shoulder, we're already at 10. The left side of the neck is 11. The parts of the face add up to 16, and we find ourselves on the other side of the neck. Oop. Something's wrong. Thanks. That equates to 17. Down the arm and to the wrist is 22. The rest of the fingers on the other hand, and we find ourselves on the other pinky, making everything a whopping 27. Isn't that impressive? All of this can bring us to a conclusion. English isn't the most advanced, it certainly isn't the best, and it isn't the most universal. Like any other language, it has its flaws, parts of it that could be fixed but aren't. The Braha can teach us to appreciate the bigger picture, the hue rather than the specific color from the full palette. Speakers of modern standard Arabic effectively prove that time is abstract and flows in all sorts of directions, not just the one we're used to. And from the Telephone, we can take away that we don't make use of what we're born with. Noticing other languages can bring a spotlight to the previously dull and unnoticeable, and create new meaning for it. With that, we arrive back in the English-speaking world, now enriched with perspectives only other cultures possess. The English bubble has been popped. We're ready to take on the world a completely different way. Let's fully implement the thinking into our daily lives and make something more out of what we already have. Don't think the language